Hi, and welcome to the Free Your Spirit podcast. I'm your guide, Carole Frey, founder of Free Spirited Wanderer, a conscious wellness business of yoga retreats, lifestyle coaching, and yoga teacher mentorship. In this podcast, we explore conscious business, yoga on and off the mat, and general lifestyle. Our aim is to help you live a more fulfilling and purposeful life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, yoga student, yoga teacher, or simply someone looking to make positive changes in your daily life. Join us as we share insights, tips, and stories to inspire you on your path to a more free-spirited life. So sit back, relax, and let's embark on a journey of self-discovery, adventure, and expansion. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Free Your Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Carole Frey. Today, we have a super special guest, Sheridan Ruth, and we are going to be talking about nervous system awareness for expansion. So Sheridan and I met in January 2021, which feels like forever ago at this point. But we did a business coaching container together. So we met in a virtual setting. We've actually never met in person, but I feel like I know her and like we have been in person together. And she was like the one girl that I like just super connected with. We both vibed over Carole King, and we have kept in contact this whole time, and we just love supporting one another within our own businesses. So just to get to know Sheridan Ruth, she is a certified integrative somatic trauma therapist, a yoga therapist, and Ayurvedic wellness coach who unites ancient esoteric wisdom with evidence-based, innovative neuroscience. Her expertise comes from years of experience in coaching others through hair loss, relationship anxiety, entrepreneurship, and OCD, plus groups and individuals, and her decade-long embodiment of these practices. Sheridan, welcome. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm excited because you and I were just talking about real life. And so, listeners, by the way, we're like 6 weeks or so, like a month delayed on this podcast because we took our time to get here. It's a bit too busy off doing life. And it's really cool because I feel like we're both coming back to the space with a new appreciation that we didn't actually have a month or 6 weeks ago for the tools and the practices that we're going to be sharing with you guys. So I feel inspired right now.
Awesome. I love that. And yeah, everything always, works out for a reason, I suppose. And it just happens when the timing is supposed to happen. So I'm super glad we are getting to do this because you're also one of the first people I thought about when I was thinking about the guests that I wanted to have. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you. And I'm really excited for this topic too, because this is something that I'm also just excited to learn more about. Oh, awesome. Okay, well, let's dive right in. So, Sheridan, what does nervous system awareness mean?
Yeah, so I think that there's been like a lot of hype in the past few years around nervous system regulation and everything. And I think that's really, really, really wonderful and marvelous. But I like to change the word to nervous system awareness because, and I'll explain what that means, because when we think about regulating our nervous system, we're kind of coming from this space of like, oh, I have to get calm. I'm supposed to be the individual that is always cool, calm, and collected. And the reality of life is that you're not. It's not going to be that person. It is very difficult to be that person. And it's not that you're failing because you're not always cool, calm, and collected. It's because you're a human being who's here on earth to have a wide range of experiences. And so when we look at nervous system awareness as opposed to nervous system regulation, really what it means is just how can I bring an awareness and an understanding to what my nervous system is experiencing and trying to create in all realms of my life. So while I'm sitting with this big emotion, what's my experience from a nervous system perspective? And how does that make life difficult for me? And how does that make life easier for me? And we can do this inside of our relationships when we're talking, when we're eating food, when we are traveling, when we are going after our goals. And I think specific to the podcast today, when we are expanding, and we're going to be talking about it a little bit more inside of a entrepreneurial work business point of view, but you can also really just take all of the themes today and apply them to literally any challenge or that you're going through right now.
I love that. And I really love that you made a point to say that you don't have to be cool, calm, and collected all the time, that we think that this is what it's about. And I feel like that's something that's put on yoga teachers a lot too, is they just assume that, yoga teachers are always calm and always grounded. And it's like, no, we're human beings too. And we're learning and doing this like right along with you. And that's something I've struggled with too, of like, do I have to feel this way, So I really love that you made a point to say that that's not what it's all about, or there's really more to it. And I love too how you do say awareness, because I guess it is like, how can you sit with this and observe this, right? And that's something we do as part of, yoga students as well. So I really love the way that you just put that. Thank you. So what does this mean in our everyday life, or just day-to-day life?
Yeah. So I'm just receiving everything you said, because I think in day-to-day life, one example is what you're saying, right? So I don't know if you've ever been, when you're doing something new and you start feeling like there's bubbles in your stomach and you get really tense. And if we look at that from a nervous system point of view, actually, let's do that in a second. If we look at that in the way that our brain normally looks like that, and the way that our society kind of encourages us to look at that, what we might do is say, well, I'm not cool, calm, and collected. I'm supposed to be able to teach people to be calm. And maybe I'm just really bad at my job. And if we look at it from a nervous system point of view, what we're actually doing is we're going, oh, yeah, the nervous system does not like new things. It does not like uncertainty. It does not like the unknown. It wants everything to be exactly the same all of the time. So the fact that my body is responding in this way, yeah, that checks out. That would make sense. My nervous system is telling me, wait, I don't want to do this new thing, but I can be aware of that. And instead of making my physical sensation mean something about who I am as a person, how good I'm doing in life, and what I should do about X, Y, Z, we're able to just hold the body in a space of compassion and go, yeah, you know what? It's hard to be a nervous system in today's society. It is hard to do things as a nervous system. And thank you. That's really great. Thank you for protecting me in that way.
Awesome. I love that. So it is definitely, holding space for it and just finding the awareness. So like observing, right? Like that helicopter vision that we kind of talk about too in yoga.
And I think it's also about, to be even more tangible about it, it's also about just like consistently checking in with yourself and saying, okay, what is my nervous system doing right now? And using that information to navigate your life. Because if you practice just checking in and saying, okay, what am I aware of in my body right now? Oh, my heart is beating. Oh, I have sensations in my chest. Or I'm feeling a little bit numb, feeling a little bit distracted, I'm feeling a little bit angry. That's nervous system awareness, and we can look at the present moment and say, what is my nervous system trying to communicate with me? And almost kind of asking, okay, how does that make sense? And what do I need to tend to and to connect to my nervous system? And, I feel like I could speak for hours as to like what actually, like as it relates to different things, but in a broad way, I think that kind of answers the question. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. That's awesome. I think just understanding that having the awareness around it can be enough. And then I feel like, from my understanding, this is where, the yoga practices and the Ayurvedic practices and like somatic practices come in too, right? Because I think, or from my understanding, I guess I'm asking too, that would be some of the ways that we can then cope, right? Or how to, what's the word? Not cope, but how to work with it, or how to heal it, I suppose.
Yeah. And I mean, most of us usually end up in the healing area, Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, Reiki, all of these things, because we intuit that there's something happening in our body that needs a little bit of tender loving care. And so Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can use those different practices, and awareness is just knowing, when do I need the practices? Because it's not just a couple of yoga classes a week.
Right. Right. Not a quick fix.
No, and you need them when you're in relationship with people, when you're talking with people, when you're waiting for the kettle to boil, when you're going to the toilet, when you're on your phone, when you're talking to your boss, when you're putting through your invoice. Like, you need them in all of these moments more, like, I would probably argue, more than when you're on the yoga mat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's what yoga teaches us too, right? Like, how do we take these practices into our daily life? And that's where I think, it's like we spend maybe 60 minutes, 2 hours on our mat, 30 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is. But it's so small with the time that we spend out in the world. And that's where I feel like, it's so important to take all of these practices into our daily life. Like, for me, I tell people, and I always like kind of joke about this, but I always need these when I'm in the car, because I'm such an impatient driver. And I just feel like I picked this up from my dad for sure, but it's like, it's everybody else's fault. I get annoyed with people, I'm rushing, whatever it is. And that is like one of the places I have to take my yoga practice more. And I haven't quite gotten there yet. Like, I have the awareness around it. But for me, like, relating this to my life, I can just think about how I need these practices and this awareness when I'm in the car as well. And I'm getting better about it. But I joke that that's like my big thing, where I forget that I've ever practiced yoga before the moment I get in my car or someone annoys me. So I really love that you made a point to say that those really are the more important aspects. So yeah, awesome. So what are some signs that we need more awareness around regulating our nervous system?
Well, I think you just gave us a really good example.
Yay.
We have, you guys to think of, you have a certain amount of, actually, I'm going to relate this back to Agni, right? So in Ayurveda, we have Agni, which is like our ability to digest things, digest food, digest the world. And when we have a really strong Agni, we can digest things fairly easily. We can take on the nutrients and we can use that to nourish ourselves, and then we can eliminate what we don't need from what we're digesting and release it, right? Our window of capacity is very similar to the Ayurvedic concept of Agni. It's, what is my capacity to digest things before my nervous system goes awry? And when we're talking about expansion, and when we're talking about growth, when we're talking about trauma healing even, what we're actually really talking about is, how can I expand my window of capacity? Because when I'm in my window of capacity, I remember my tools. I'm extremely wise. I have a great perspective. I am patient. I'm consistent. I am creative. I'm compassionate. I feel connected to others. I'm able to have difficult conversations and like feel really good with the other person and want to hang out with people. I feel that I kind of honestly feel like how you feel after a great yoga class.
Awesome.
Good. And sometimes when I'm in my window of capacity, I can still feel fear, but I'm able to be like, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit scared right now, without going so far into the fear where it becomes so overwhelming and too much.
Okay.
And so in the day-to-day life, a lot of the times this looks like, I'm going to read something out of
Awesome.
I'm Ready.
Awesome.
Because
Ooh, I feel special.
yeah, this actually is special because I haven't shared this.
I love it.
In this way. Yeah. The book that I'm writing doesn't have a name yet, and it's like say shoot that. But essentially what it is it's the intersection of Ayurveda and this philosophy and understanding of the world and the science of life, intersected with polyvagal theory and nervous system awareness. And the most empowering way that I have found to understand the nervous system and the window of capacity is looking at the way that the different doshas, so the different kind of qualities are, it means imbalance, but I don't like that word, actually play out inside of our nervous system. So just bear with me and I'm going to explain it all.
Awesome.
Our nervous system is governed by the quality of vata, and vata is air and ether. And this is because, if you really think about it, it's the system of nerves that runs through your entire body. And it has this electric kind of communication that goes around, and it kind of travels through these fast moving elements of air and ether, right?
Okay.
There's more to it. Just read a textbook on it, but that's essentially it.
Awesome.
And what happens is, because it has a predisposition to air and ether, what happens is it very easily gets dysregulated when we put the qualities of air and ether or vata into the nervous system. And those qualities are inconsistency, like dryness, the ones that stick up for me is like inconsistency, uncertainty, fear, and dryness. And so there are other qualities that can come into the nervous system and can dysregulate it, but I'm just going to focus on this one first because it probably is the most common. And it is when you notice some of the qualities that I'm about to mention, and I'll give you guys a little link to a PDF where you can look for some more maybe. So when you notice some of the qualities that I'm about to mention, those will be signs that you have gone into this specific type of imbalance. And it basically are things like, number one, you feel like things have to happen right now. You become incredibly impatient. Your mind is scattered and you're vigilant and you're hyper aroused. You're looking for all of these risks and red flags. Have you ever been on a date and you're like, there's got to be something wrong? Just,
yeah.
Right? It's everything that is fear and scattered, your eyes twitching and you're rapid breathing and you're sweating and there's tension and you are hyper vigilant. You're scanning for threats and you are worried and concerned that something's going to happen. And you get this energy of it's me against the world. I have to control things. I have to rush things. I have to do things right now. You get very single-minded, you're very tunnel vision focused. And sometimes it's also this energy of quitting, I'll just leave that because it's not going to work out anyway.
Yeah. No, I'm just agreeing with you and I'm fully relating. So yes, I'm loving this.
So I'm kind of curious to have your thoughts about what I'm about to say next, because this is what I would call the more anxious vata imbalance inside of the nervous system, right? But then of course, and I think I'll add here, it tends to be more towards I must to and I have to thoughts. And the pitta imbalance is similar, but here it's this anxious, I must to and I have to. But the pitta imbalance is more of an angry.
Yep. That feels like me lately. Yeah.
So we have this vata imbalance, and I think that's really, really just a beautiful way of seeing it. You just want to get to know, you want to be aware of where you land on the spectrum. I tend to be more pitta imbalance. It has its pros and cons. And your pitta imbalance is you get angry at people. You're defensive. You are critical of yourself and others. Sometimes you lie. Sometimes you're just agitated and restless. And it comes with all of these classic sympathetic responses of sense of urgency, hyper focused on something, decreased ability to think logically, impulsiveness. But there is angry or judgmental quality to it. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. I definitely can understand that. I feel from experience, I can understand that too. And sometimes you almost don't understand where it comes from. I've had that happen too, where sometimes I feel I get in these situations where I'll blame other people, but I'm they have nothing to do with how I'm feeling. And it's you can be sensitive to, I think what is it? The human design projectors. And that was something I learned. I know 'cause this is all kind of connected. I know this is now a different thing from Ayurveda, but one of the things I learned was what we don't have like a defined solar plexus and that we seek energy from the outside world. And I feel like that's something I've noticed is how I'm so impacted by other people's energy. And I've had to learn how to handle that, especially when you teach yoga, because it can be really easy to be like, oh, the energy is really low and to kind of get sucked into that, if that makes sense. So I feel like I've had to learn how to keep my own energy. And maybe I'm kind of getting like off topic right now, but I feel like within that, of like that kind of concept of like I can be really influenced by other people's energy. And I feel like because of that, I've blamed other people sometimes. So maybe thinking like, oh, the energy is so low, but it's like it's not their responsibility. I don't know. It's a weird thing.
You're kind of off topic, but that is what your body, like we have this thing called neuroception. And we know that we have subconscious perception. We perceive things either consciously or subconsciously. And actually below that, there's this neuroception, which is this term that was coined to understand the way the nervous system is taking in information. And it's doing that through all of the five senses. And it's basically your body just asking 1,000 times a minute, am I safe? Am I loved? 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 And so when you're out there teaching yoga and your body perceives that Jacqueline in the corner is kind of off, what your body might actually do is say, well, she's having an off day. Oh my God, but she's going to hate my class. Oh my God, she doesn't love me. Oh, I'm not safe.
Yes, exactly. Literally, that is what we do. It's like creating the stories, right? And I know we all do it all the time. And this is where, I think we come back to yoga too, of like clear perception, right? And what is it? Of, oh gosh. Of just having like that clear perception of the world, essentially. And when we see things from that clouded perception, and then we create a story from that misconception. So I guess like that's what I think of that too.
And that's exactly what it is. And that's exactly what I'm running in the book, is that regulated nervous system is that sattvic, clear understanding of wise, benevolent, and equanimous understanding of the world.
Yes.
When our nervous system becomes dysregulated, it is now looking at things through the cloudiness of fear, anxiety, and cancer.
Right.
The cloudiness of pitta, jealousy, anger, judgment, or the cloudiness of kasa, heavy, hard, painful.
Yeah. And past experience, right? It all comes from past experience as well, or I feel like I've had to learn that too with like retreat launches or, things around that of just because, maybe the first one didn't go as I wanted it to doesn't mean the second one won't, looking back like years ago when I first started doing this and I had to kind of get over that hump and then take it as like a learning lesson too. But anyways, and I've noticed how past patterning like just sticks within our body, right? And we respond from the past rather than responding from the present. And that's something I've had to really work on.
And so when you are responding from the past, what's actually happening is coming back to what we were saying about window of capacity. You have reached your window of capacity and you are now pulling on your coping mechanism or your stress response to manage what you're perceiving as a threat. You're like, oh, it's Jackie in the corner again and she didn't like the class. It's a threat. It's going to be like last retreat, Right. And so like pulling on this coping mechanism. And they're very similar coping mechanisms, these two that I'm describing, the pitta and the vata, or you can also see them as the flight or the fight.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
I'm going to get you. Yeah. And I think it's funny because like listeners to your policies, Carole and I are like, we're like laughing along with it because you and I are very heavy pitta qualities and it helps us in our career and our leadership. We're able to get things done.
Right.
We're leaders, we articulate, we're great pitta people. And we can only access those skills because we are also experiencing the difficulties. Which is
Yes. And it's so true. And it's Yeah, I feel like I have a million things I could say right now, and I'm trying to figure out the direction. And I feel like that's my Vata too, because I definitely do have the Vata mindset sometimes of just like ping, ping, ping all over the place. And one thing you were saying too, I think you were saying this with Vata, but feeling like we have to do everything right away, or the urgency is Pitta, but Vata is right.
It's just a
Okay.
response.
Okay.
To do everything. The quality is different. Feeling like I have to do everything because something is going to go wrong and I'm scared would be probably more Vata oriented.
Yes.
Feeling like I have to do everything right now because I have this fighting energy inside of me of like, go and do it, you will die.
Yes.
It's a little bit different.
Right. And I think that's where, as like entrepreneurship, you experience that a lot, or at least I have, of I feel like, wanting to do, finding that urgency. So like I'll get all these ideas, and then having to understand that just because I have these ideas doesn't mean I have to do them right now and learn. And then I'm like that fear of, oh, if I don't do it right now, someone else is going to do it, or I'm going to, people are going to forget me if I'm not growing and expanding, or like this has to be done type of thing. And I'm even feeling that, I'm working on my 2024 retreat launch right now, and like just got back from Italy 2 weeks ago. We leave for Vermont in less than 2 weeks. We have Nepal, which is like a huge retreat in September. So everything is just chaos right now, and I'm I feel like I didn't realize how much I needed this conversation because I'm experiencing this so much. But it's like I'm trying to figure out of just, I guess, how to slow back down or how to check back in of like what is a priority, and what is the most important thing. And like the nice thing with entrepreneurship too is you can move things around. Like it is just me and my husband now, but it's like if I can't launch when I want to launch, it's not the end of the world. And that's something I have to learn too, that like I'm not going to die if I don't get this launch date out. And I feel like that's where I get that pit up, like a very goal set. Like I want to hit my goals. I don't know. So I don't know if this is making sense or if I'm relating to this, but that's where I'm just learning that, I guess like finding the self-care within that as well. Yeah. Which I think is the nervous system. Yeah.
It is. And I'm going to say this, and then maybe we'll return to the other state, but I'm just going to we need to comment on it, because what you're talking about is like there are two problems. Mm-hmm. There is your nervous system response to all of the uncertainty.
Yes.
And the movement. And then there's the actual problem of like, okay, how can I structure my week, my day, my hour, my next 3 months, my next 6 months, my next 12 months in a way that supports me? But we can't find that wise, that bit creative, problem-solving, thinking, go-getting individual inside of you until we have found a solution to problem number one, which is how do I complete the stress response in my body? My body has just looked at my calendar and it's thinking right now that I am basically dead because it's got too many things and I'm not going to be able to do all of them. And it's having a stress response, and it's making me go into an urgent response. So we actually have to address that stress response before we can come back and look at the calendar and be like, okay, I'm going to be really wise about this. And I'm just going to, what do I actually need to move around and see it with clarity? And what a lot of people do is, and I've done this and I still do this, like it's for humans, is we will try and find the solution to the problem before completing the stress response, before fighting a regulated nervous system. And it just doesn't work, and it makes us very tired.
Yes, that absolutely. And I feel like that's something I've been having to learn even just from overwhelm, that instead of trying to, which is the stress, right? Instead of trying to push through that, how can I go take a walk instead and like just leave my phone at home and get outside, because I'm not productive when I'm trying to push through. So I feel like that's something I'm trying to learn and understand right now too, of like, how can I come back to the root of it? And I think it comes back to like overall, like self-care. But then like you said, when you take that time to like go for a walk and leave the phone at home and know everything's going to be okay for an hour or whatever, 30 minutes, and then I feel so much better when I come back, right? It's like that stillness, that silence we even get from meditation or yoga when the answers come, because we actually are quiet enough to listen. And it's so funny because there's still times I won't give myself that space to go for a walk or to sit and meditate, because I'm afraid if I stop working, the world's going to end. And I have to remember that it's not going to end. Yeah, I'm learning a lot from this. I love this, or at least I'm just having a better understanding of myself too.
It's the point. That's the whole thing. Yeah, and so what you're describing there, it sounds like you kind of tend towards more of that sympathetic response, and there's this other response, which is the immobilization, which I like to relate more to the element dosha of kapha, which is this watery and earthiness. But and we actually move between both of them. What's interesting is that when I start describing this, I want you guys to remember, like, the way that we get out of this is actually through the energy of the prior to, through action and through a little bit of activation and maybe anger and maybe fear. And so what happens a lot of the time, our nervous system gets activated, it goes into this sympathetic response. We either don't process that energy in an efficient and effective way, meaning we don't do it in the moment. We don't use it the way that the energy wants to be used. And instead, it goes into this immobilization and shutdown. Or sometimes we completely skip the first step. And once again, it's just about noticing your tendencies and noticing your tendencies in different spaces. So, for example, you might be the type of person who skips the sympathetic response because maybe you tried that when you were a kid. You tried to speak up and you tried to get away, and it wasn't effective, and it was just more effective to people please. And so when we're in this immobilized response, some people call it a freeze, some people call it a fawn. They're actually slightly different, but they both have one thing in common, which is that we are becoming immobilized, meaning our body thinks that we just need to get heavy and play dead. What we're doing is I like to think of it as like your body is pulling on the heaviness of kapha to make it appear dead and easy for your predator to.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
So what this looks like is that we get very obedient. We withdraw. We have difficulty with memory and concentration. We feel overwhelmed and flooded, but it's not an overwhelm and flooded with like, oh my God, I have to act right now with urgency. It's more like, oh, okay, I just looked at my calendar and that was just like, oh, that's just a lot. I'm going to grab my phone and scroll for 30 minutes and just numb out.
Yep.
This energy is numb and heavy and depressing, shut down, feeling small, feeling disconnected, feeling hopeless, feeling lonely, feeling shame. It's appeasing. It's just like, yeah, whatever you want, we'll do that. Whatever just makes this go away. It's zoning out. It's feeling immobilized. It's feeling like numbness when you try to connect with your body. It can actually like lead to slow digestion and constipation and, you know, getting a cold really regularly. And even as I am still speaking about it, and you actually start to feel the heavy kind of like energy in your body.
Yeah. Yes. Interesting. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
And so some people might tend towards that. If you're the type of person who watches Netflix and just goes into a cave as soon as something big happens in your life, you probably tend towards this. And all of these are signs that we're just outside of our window of capacity. It's not a sign that there's anything wrong with us.
Right.
It's just, oh, I exited my window of capacity. Yeah. How do I get back to it so that I can look at things with intent?
I love that. So speaking of, what are ways that we can increase our window of capacity? And just doing this, I mean, what like in business and life and relationships, just I guess, yeah, in general. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I know I said it before, I'll say it again, is being aware of your pattern is the first step. And for many people, for a period of time, it might just be being aware. It might just be saying, oh, there I go, getting anxious again. Oh, there I go, getting judgmental again. Oh, there I go, shutting down. And it's not a shaming awareness. It's just like a loving awareness. And so it looks like when you sit down to work, you're planning your class, you're writing an email, just asking yourself, oh, how does my nervous system respond to this? And you will expand upon that. And I ask all of my clients to expand on that. And we have exercises that we do, but without, going into all of that detail, because that wouldn't be supportive. It's how does my nervous system respond to this task? And when you're having, let's say, I don't know, you're talking to the studio or you're talking to your partner about the new investment that you want to make. It looks like saying, oh, how does my nervous system respond when I sit down for this conversation? And also catching yourself in these conversations or when you're doing these activities and noticing when you go outside of your window of capacity and actually saying to yourself and the person that you are with, yeah, just, you know what, I just need 5 minutes. I'm going to go do something and I will be right back. And just bringing yourself back into that sattvic regulated state before continuing with the piece of work that you're doing, right? Tangibly, I like to think about through the doshas because I think it is the most accessible way. I know that, there's so many people out there who are like, here's a breath practice and here is an essential oil and all of that stuff is really, really good. And I actually have lists about I give everyone. But what we're really talking about is the opposite of what we're experiencing is going to be regulating. So if I'm in that Kaphic heaviness, right, and I'm just feeling really, really shamey, I need the opposite of that. I need action. I need to get up. I need movement. I need like citrus and sun and lightness and fire. I need to eat something. I need to go out and eat Peruvian spicy food and have my best friend give me a pep talk.
I love that. Yes. I love that.
If I'm in that pitta imbalance, I do not need more spicy food and I do not need another pep talk. It's like calmness and softness and slowness. And I need to have it. That's why we have a nice long exhale.
Yeah.
And have a nice cold shower, maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I'm in the more Vata state, what I need is simplicity, consistency, and warmth. And stability and warmth. We balance Vata with Kapha, so we need that stability and this warmth and sweetness. It's sweet talking yourself. It's having the same routine every day. It's taking things off of your plate. It's eating like your mom's soup,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love how you bring it up to the doshas too. And, because it's one of those ways that we get to learn about it, right? Like when we know our dosha and we understand ourselves, it's like an element of understanding who we are, right? Understanding our true nature, essentially. And I love that Ayurveda teaches that everyone is unique and then we all have our own nature. And that's where I love that it's not like a one size fits all also, because even though you and I are both pitta, it doesn't mean that the same things are going to work for us. And I love that because I just think it's so cool because that's what really encourages us to get to know ourselves and to figure. I feel like that's where the awareness comes in, right? And it's like trial and error too. Okay, let me try the cold shower, and if that doesn't, let me try it for a little bit. It's not like one time and then we give up, but let me stick with it and see how I feel about it. And then maybe from there, do I need to pivot or is this something I continue to do? And for me, I've learned that walking and just getting outside without my phone and without headphones bones has been really impactful for me. And so I guess just saying like in alignment with Ayurveda, I just love that that's what it teaches. And I love that you are connecting this to the doshas and like figuring out how to regulate or how to, sorry, not regulate, how to have that nervous system awareness around that and like learning about your window of capacity. So I just think that's super cool the way that you're connecting this. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you, because you're right. And everything, I will say that as well. It's like we might find a tool that works really, really well for a couple of months and then it will stop working. And that's actually the job, because I want you to remember that the nervous system is irregular. It will change. You are a human being that will change. Your mental capacity will change. The parts of you that show up in different ways will change. And so, things will stop working, and that it'll be harder to find relief through them at different times. But your job is just to get, once again, back to that regulated space and see it. If I look at things that stop working from an activated sympathetic space, I might be fearful that I'm never going to feel good again, or I might be angry that it didn't work. Or if I look at it from an immobilized space, I might feel shame, like there's something wrong with me, it doesn't work, or I might feel hopeless, this is never going to work. But if we look at it from a regulated space, we might look at it and say, oh, I get to be super creative about I get to like find a new way of working. How fun. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. And isn't that part of the journey too, right? It's like, trying something and then it might just lead us to the next thing. It doesn't mean that it didn't do anything for us, even with our coaching program that we did. And I do a little bit of coaching, but not that much of it. But I was this is maybe a little different, but was able to take like the women's retreat and turn it into a retreat. So I guess anyway, or the women's coaching program and turning it into a retreat. So anyways, I just feel like that's part of the journey of like, doing something, trying it out, and then, hey, maybe that doesn't work, but it's going to lead you to a different path. I probably could have picked a different example, but anyways, so.
That's a good example.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, it's still like guidance from our nervous system, right? Of like what feels good inside, I suppose.
Exactly. That's a whole different conversation.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Next podcast episode. We'll do that. Awesome. Okay. So as you know, a lot of my listeners are yoga teachers and students. So how does the expansion of your nervous system relate to Yoga Asana?
Yeah. So when we're talking about bringing yourself back down to your regulation when you go outside of your window of capacity, we're talking about expanding your window of capacity. The more you can do that, the more you will expand your window of capacity. You'll spend more time in it. And when you are on the mat, I'm going to use Bird of Paradise because that's like the pose that just it is an interesting lesson for me. That
Okay.
pose. And it always tells me how I'm feeling inside, right? So you're trying to get into Bird of Paradise. You will actually notice your nervous system state depending and your tendencies, depending on how you relate to when you fall or when you can't do the binds or when your leg doesn't go super straight or when your wrist is hurting so you can't even begin or you've injured yourself. So, and we want to use Yoga Asana, we want to use our time on the mat to breathe and digest the sensations of the pose, which is what expands your window of capacity without going into dysregulation. So you might notice that you go into dysregulation when you start feeling like you have to get out of the pose right now, or you start being really critical of yourself, or you hate the teacher. Oh my God, I hate it. Why much? She did 5 breaths on this side, but she did 10 on the other. Oh my God, why? Or when you start shaming yourself and you're like, they're the person, why can't I?
Yes.
And these are just signs that you are outside of your window of capacity. So use your Yoga Asana to see that, breathe, come back to your body, give yourself some loving, tender, sweet talk, and continue and expand, allow your experience to expand into the pose, right? I don't know if it makes sense, but I can imagine like when you're on the mat, you just allow yourself to kind of expand into the pose. Am I being clear?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was trying to think earlier, even when you say expand your window of capacity, I kind of think about it with, some of the yoga postures, and I mean, in Ashtanga, you're given posture by posture. So you have to build a relationship with every single posture. And I really think about that too, of what you were saying of like, okay, how can I increase my limit, right? How do I grow? Like how does my body open up? How does my breath get deeper? How does my mind stay more present? And I think in that realm, we are expanding our limitations, right? Or like we can now I'm trying to think of how to say this because I had it kind of earlier. Right. Because it's like, so basically as you expand the posture, that's also related to how you expand the window of capacity. Because I mean, your nervous system is a part of that posture, right? Of how we react.
You're about what creates the foundation of how you experience. Yeah.
Right.
The nervous system is how you experience the foundations of life. So as you expand your window of capacity, you expand your borders and your edges out into the posture. You can hold more sensation in your muscles. You can hold more breath.
Yes.
More love.
Yes. Beautiful.
You can hold more success. You can hold more money. You can hold more everything.
I love that. I don't know if you know this too, but so second series Ashtanga is all nervous system healing. So it's Nadi Shodhana is what it's called. And it's all about the nervous system through back bends and foot behind the head. So, and I was asking my teacher about this too. And I was like, okay, so, back bends are very sympathetic nervous system, right? They get us in that fight and flight, but they also can be very energizing and expansive. And I was asking her, I was like, so is the whole point to be in the parasympathetic, right? So the idea is like you get, or you're in this crazy back bend and you're getting in this sympathetic, but then how do we use the breath to try to find that state of calmness? And I feel like that's what we have to do in life too, right? Where it's like when things get really chaotic and we get in that sympathetic system in that state, and then what do we need to do to calm ourselves back down? And I just thought that was interesting. So it's like you're healing the nervous system through testing the nervous system, through getting it in that sympathetic. And then it's like, okay, how are you going to handle this? And it's helped me so much of looking when I like first had some of those postures back in 2020. And then I didn't get to visit them for a while through the pandemic, and getting back into them again. It's interesting to see how different I am, just even mentally, emotionally, physically, really everything in those postures. And I feel like some of it too is even just the awareness that I'm supposed to, and not supposed to again, but like how to find that calmness within it. But I guess it is interesting. And I feel like that's like a nice way to check your growth also, right? Of like, how did you feel before in this posture? What came up for you then and what came up for you now? And one of my things, like when I was doing Kapotasana, like what you were talking about, like the whole thing when we get back in, like the fear of like, okay, what happens if, what's your biggest fear? Like I get hurt. What if you get hurt? You can't work. What if you can't work? You can't pay your bills. If you can't pay your bills, you can't live in a house. And then you're going to end up in a gutter and you're going to die alone in the gutter. And then you say it out loud and you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like that's not going to happen. But it was funny when we did that. And I was like, okay, so my fear of Kapotasana is that I'm going to end up alone in a gutter and die. So it's like when you say it out loud. But it's interesting. And I feel like that is the awareness of it, and you're like, okay, that's not going to happen, so let's move forward and let's deal with this in a better, more efficient way. But anyways, like, so that's helped me so much in relating it to that. But anyways.
I love that. And that's it. And we feel the nervous system through activating it, which is why we live life, because life is going to activate us.
Yes, I love that. That's such a great way. I love that. Awesome. Okay, so what do you have as one takeaway that you can offer for our listeners today? You can give a few. One's hard. One's hard.
Really, I want the one takeaway to be, this is the thing that I was actually saying this to a client today. So she has this, it's a story without a name. She has this habit where she wants to go to bed earlier and she wants to spend less time on her phone and she wants to do more self-development and yoga and all that stuff, but she doesn't. or she starts and then it gets hard and then she just turns everything off and goes and watches Netflix or scrolls on her phone. And then she shames herself for it. And what we did in session today was I said to her, okay, what if we got rid of the shame? And what if instead we just brought some awareness to the nervous system? And we said, okay, your nervous system, when it is confronted with these very present practices that are asking you to go to these very vulnerable parts of yourself, it receives all of that information. It doesn't want to digest it. It says, this is too much. Goodbye. Shut down. No. What if just for now, we just were aware of that and said, that's my nervous system communicating to me my current capacity. And in Thai, we will lean into that discomfort. We will breathe into that. We will expand the edges of it. And we will do that with resources and trauma healing and lifestyle techniques and like all of these different things. We will do that. But up until then, just for now, can we just bring awareness to the no's and the yeses that your nervous system gives you without shaming it, without trying to fix it, and just say, okay, this is information. Thank you. I'm going to take that forward.
I love that. I think that's really important for us to learn as human beings, because I'm thinking about that right now too. And I feel like some of it is just like, how can we just be where we are and who we are and allow that to be okay sometimes and then learn from there. But awesome. And is there anything else that you would love to like share on this? Anything else that you want to say? Anything that I didn't get to ask you that, you really wanted to tap into?
No, I really think that's it. I would love to connect with your listeners. I'm currently doing a really generous offering at the moment, which is a free 30-minute call. And I'm actually helping people create a 4-month nervous system regulation plan. I just had one yesterday and it was really fun. It was a lot about healing chaos and healing through the father wound as it relates to your nervous system and building pleasure in. And they've been really, really wonderful. So I think, listeners, go and implement those things. And if it's something that you would be interested in and curious about, to receive a personalized nervous system regulation plan.
Yes. That sounds amazing.
That's reach out and Carole will make sense.
Yeah. And I will say to everyone, Sheridan does an amazing job with her newsletters and her emails. So definitely sign up through on the bottom. She has given, just like every time I read them, there's just so much wisdom in there. She shares so much. She's very vulnerable in such a beautiful way that it's just made me, I don't know, just connect with another entrepreneur on another level too. And you can just tell how much time she puts into everything she writes. So definitely sign up for her newsletter as well. Follow her on Instagram. She also does an incredible job with her Instagram. I saw her grow the hell out of that thing in the past couple of years. So she just crushes it with everything. And you'll have all the links at the bottom. And I think we're going to have her on here again, because I feel like there's so many other things that we could talk about, and probably a million other questions I'm going to think of after. But anyways, thank you so much. And everyone make sure to check out the links below. And thank you, Sheridan.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're so welcome. All right, everybody. We will see you next week for our weekly episode. And until then, keep showing up as your truest, most authentic self.